everybody, and welcome back. And if this is your first time here, thank you for joining me. My name is Gerald. I'm a student meteorologist here at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and I'm going to run you through the forecast today. For today, while we have these ongoing severe storms in the south, as well as snow still ongoing in the plains, and then I'm going to run you through this week and see what kind of changes we can expect after this system is done pushing through the country. And then we're going to touch on long range and the chances of snowier weather returning to the East Coast. So a lot to unpack in today's video. So let's go ahead and get into it. And if you do like the video, go ahead and hit the like button. And I would love for you to subscribe. We're getting really close to 300 now. So we've made some pretty tremendous growth over the past couple weeks. But let's go ahead and get right into the ongoing weather. So as you can tell here, pretty easy to spot the weather system ongoing today. We've got this low pressure system just cranking away here into the northern plains. It's kind of just meandering there, which is really helping to just have this snowfall continue into portions of Minnesota and Wisconsin, really for the past 24 hours, and that will continue. Also, you notice we have this very strong convection ongoing here into Dixie Alley, especially across Alabama currently, where we've had a couple of tornado warnings issued throughout the day. And at least one tornado I know of that has been confirmed with one of those warnings that occurred earlier today in sections of southern Alabama. But other than that, we just got some showery, kind of dreary conditions ongoing here into the Midwest and the Northeast. And that is visible very well on our satellite today. So looking at the current hazards ongoing across the country right now, still have winter storm warnings as well as winter weather advisories up here into the northern plains. Even a couple of counties left in an ice storm warning here into Minnesota, just south of the Minneapolis metro, as that low pressure just continues to meander up there and dump snow. And then, of course, tornado watches here in the yellow, here into Dixie Alley. And you can even spot a couple of these red polygons indicating tornado warnings ongoing right now at about the 4 to 4:30 time frame here on the East Coast. And then even some severe thunderstorm warnings here getting into the mountains of North Carolina as the strong line of storms continues to push east. And we will take a look at that next. All right, so looking at radar here across the country, again, matches up very well with our satellite that we've been taking a look at. You can tell here, low pressure still with that snow ongoing to the north of it. And then we have just this line of storms still marching here across the east and then showers up into the northeast. So let's take a zoom in look here into some of these areas, and we'll get right to that severe weather that is ongoing, as that is the most pressing issue that we are currently dealing with. So all of these yellow boxes are severe thunderstorm warnings here, and then you even see a red box here indicating a tornado warning on radar. So this line of storms that are currently pushing through the southeast are going to continue to push eastbound overnight, eventually working their way into the Carolinas. Before we get another round of storms moving through the same general area tomorrow, where we have another threat of severe weather, which we will take a look at. Again, up here to the northeast, just kind of showery conditions ongoing. It's been kind of a dreary 24 hours, and that will continue into tomorrow. But we'll take a in-depth dive at Futurecast in all of these areas here in a moment. And again, a lot of this is still snow falling just north of Minneapolis and into Wisconsin. All right, so taking a look at tomorrow's threat, once this first line of storms pushes through, what we're actually going to get is a bit of another low pressure of sorts to form and then ride back up over these areas tomorrow, bringing another risk of severe weather to a lot of the same areas that are seeing it today, with that slight risk being highlighted here just south of Atlanta, down into Macon, Georgia, down towards Tallahassee, and then that marginal risk stretching throughout a good section of the southeastern coastline here, including Charleston, South Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, Charlotte, and even Greenville, Spartanburg into the upstate of South Carolina. So let's go and take a look at Futurecast now for these areas and see when we can expect this to begin to clear up, and then we will take this Futurecast through the eastern half of the country, and I'll show you the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and as well as the Midwest, who is still dealing with that snow. But again, as you can see, we've got this line of storms that they're beginning to become more linear here, especially into northern Alabama and Georgia, with still some more scattered convection here into the southern half of Alabama and Mississippi. So as we go into the next couple of hours, this is where we'll likely have more of that tornado threat, and then more of a straight line wind threat here into these areas of North Georgia, upstate South Carolina, and western North Carolina. So as we move this ahead into time, this is going into about 6, 7 o'clock tonight. That line of storms should begin to push through the mountains of North Carolina into the upstate of South Carolina, and even pushing through the Atlanta, Georgia area, where I wouldn't be surprised to see some strong gusty winds. And then as we go further into the overnight, this line of storms continues to push off towards Charlotte, eventually into Columbia, South Carolina, into the overnight, Augusta, Georgia, before, as you can tell, like I was talking about, we get that next batch of moisture to get going as we get into the midnight time frame here. And then as we work our way towards sunrise, that next line of storms is working through more areas, including getting close to Atlanta around sunrise. And we even have more of this kind of popcorn convection, if you will, which we'll have to watch out for an isolated tornado threat with that, even into the overnight hours. Although the ingredients aren't perfect here, definitely enough that we'll have to worry about that. And then as we finally go into tomorrow afternoon, we'll begin to clear out into the southeast from west to east before this line finally works its way off the eastern seaboard, going into sunset tomorrow on Wednesday. All right, so let's look at some of those severe weather components here in the southeast. We'll start by looking at the only thing we're going to look at is the significant tornado parameters here, just to give you a quick rundown and an idea of where some of these storms could begin to rotate and potentially produce some tornadoes. So currently dealing with that really out here in Alabama, as we saw with some of those tornado warnings that we've been dealing with throughout the day. But as we go into sunset and into the overnight, those ingredients begin to die down as we lose some of that instability. But we do get a flare-up of that again back out towards Mississippi as that next line of storms begins to form. And then we could even see some leftover ingredients into sections of southern Georgia. As we get into about midnight here, again, another round of storms working their way back through Birmingham with a more limited chance of tornadic activity, but that threat is still there. And then as we get into tomorrow morning, that will begin to push east into Atlanta before tomorrow afternoon getting a surge of some of these ingredients up into the Carolinas. So a place like Columbia, South Carolina, down towards Charleston, and up into North Carolina will have to keep their eyes open for some of that. And again, models hinting at maybe some isolated storms here going into tomorrow afternoon into the coastal plain, causing some problems before again that moves out going into tomorrow night. So let's take a look at the mid-Atlantic now. Not expecting severe weather here, but still rainy conditions, so I'll walk you through it here. As we get into sunset tonight, again, kind of just drizzly conditions here throughout the mid-Atlantic and into the northeast. But as we go overnight, should begin to clear up a little bit, but still isolated scattered showers through a big section of the mid-Atlantic here before going into tomorrow now. That second batch of moisture, as you can see here, begins to work its way in, and we'll likely have a very soggy Wednesday here with pretty rainy conditions throughout the day during your Wednesday. And don't be surprised, maybe that line of severe storms can work its way even into sections of southeastern Virginia, maybe a place like Williamsburg or the Norfolk area. So we'll watch out for that and see if potentially that line of storms can work its way that far north. But once we get through tomorrow, it should begin to clear out into tomorrow evening across the mid-Atlantic with maybe some showers left over. But by the time we get towards sunset tomorrow on Wednesday, should really clear out in this area. Taking a look at the northeast now, pretty similar story to the mid-Atlantic. Definitely no severe weather here, though, to worry about. Again, just kind of dreary conditions this evening. Maybe some higher elevation mixed precipitation, maybe even a little bit of ice into sections of Vermont and New Hampshire, but just kind of showery conditions here throughout the northeast overnight tonight. As we get into tomorrow morning, maybe a bit of a lull in that action before, again, this second batch of moisture works its way into the northeast tomorrow afternoon going into Wednesday. And with that, we will have to watch out for a section here of icy weather and potentially a little bit of snow into far northern New England, into extreme northern New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire as we get into sunset tomorrow on Wednesday, before maybe even seeing a pretty good thumping of snow into a place like Maine during your overnight on Wednesday. Again, this is Wednesday night going towards midnight, rain here for the major cities like Boston, New York, Philadelphia. However, that wintry precipitation could get up into a place like Bangor, Maine. So we'll watch out for that. And the National Weather Service has issued some winter weather advisories for this kind of area here that could be dealing with some of this on Wednesday night. But by the time we get into Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon, a lot nicer weather here through New England, although maybe some leftover lake effect showers and snow showers in some of the normal areas that would expect that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and wrap this up, or this section of the video at least, with looking at the Midwest and what is left of the snow falling here. Again, pretty heavy snow going on here throughout Minneapolis right now. As we get into tonight, that will continue, although lightening up and turning more into just kind of some light snow, maybe some sleet mixing in, and potentially even some freezing rain into Minneapolis. But that heavier band of snow moves into the UP of Michigan here and northern Wisconsin into the overnight before the system finally kind of begins to fade away and just leave some leftover snow showers through a big portion here of Minnesota, Wisconsin. And we'll watch out for maybe some lake effect enhanced moisture moving back over here into portions of northern Michigan going into Wednesday afternoon. That could become a bit of a problem in those areas. But once we get into tomorrow night and into Thursday, this really should clear up and really just be left over with some snow showers here across the Great Lakes. And looking at the snowfall totals that are left to come here with that, again, we're expecting the greatest totals here into this general area of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan. Although, again, watch out for this area of Michigan could get some lake effect enhanced snow as that low pressure is still cranking and bringing moisture here off of the lake. So watch out for that. Models might be underdoing this a little bit in that area. All right, so that is what is currently going on. Now let's go ahead and take a look at through the rest of this week as the system moves out, what we can expect on the back end of it. So again, I'm going to kind of skip ahead here because we just looked at the more in-depth view of this pretty much, but this is now Thursday afternoon here. You can see a lot clearer here across the eastern United States, some leftover moisture here across the Great Lakes and potentially into far northeastern New England on your Thursday afternoon, but much clearer generally across the eastern half of the country here. As we go into the weekend, this is your Friday afternoon, still pretty clear. We'll watch for maybe some moisture trying to work its way back into New England, getting some light snow on Friday there, although I wouldn't expect anything too serious. But what this drier weather is going to do is set the stage for our next system here. As we get into Friday night into Saturday, this is the GFS beginning to launch this next system into the central part of the country. And as we work into Saturday afternoon, bringing some snow here, a swath of snow on the northern side of this system throughout Ohio, sections of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and even maybe northern Virginia here into your Saturday. So could see some snow in a place like Philly maybe going into this weekend, which we haven't seen much snow in places like Baltimore, DC, Philadelphia this year. So could get potentially your first, swath of snow to move in, and that will be from Friday to Saturday. So let's go ahead and look at that same system now on the European model and see what kind of discrepancies we have between the two. Again, I'm going to skip ahead here to going into Friday night and Saturday. Euro agrees with the GFS here, bringing our next system into the eastern half of the country going into the weekend. And the Euro, as you can tell, is a lot less robust with this system than the GFS, with just a lot more limited moisture, not bringing any kind of snow here into this general swath from Ohio over to Pennsylvania. So still some discrepancies here between the models, but what they do kind of agree on that I will touch on now is once we get into the later half of this weekend coming up, they both try to bring another plume of moisture here into the southeast and then further up into New England. So while there's more disagreement, funnily enough, on the first half of this system, they both agree on moisture generally returning to these areas going later into this weekend. And this would likely be a pretty warm system. So if you want to see snow, you're more likely to see it if we can get that first system to develop. But again, this is Sunday night on the Euro, again, rain redeveloping here across the Ohio and Tennessee River valleys. Let's take a look at now the GFS for this, I guess, second sort of system. Monday here, again, the GFS agrees, gets some rain moving into the southeast on Sunday night, I should say, before eventually what the GFS does here is tries to get this to strengthen a little bit more and a little bit further to the south and the east. So GFS here, about less than a week from today now, showing some Appalachian snow here. The Euro doesn't quite agree with that. Again, this is the Euro. It shows a weaker system and further displaced to the north and west. So this would be all rain through here and lighter rain. But we'll watch that. Again, the Euro has a warmer system, so you're not going to see snow in some of these areas that the GFS is showing it going into early next week. But we'll keep an eye on that. We'll watch the trends. And the GFS even tries to sneak this up the coast a little bit and get some snow potentially into the I-95 corridor. But again, disagreement with the models here, so we will continue to watch that into the future. So let's go talk about temperatures now that we're going to be dealing with throughout this week. This is currently, again, we've been dealing with this highly above average temperature, gradient, if you will, here into the eastern United States. But as this system pushes through and we get into Thursday, more average temperatures here across the east, although still above average, closer to what you would expect this time of year. And we won't have nearly as many 60s and 70s here across the east. And then as we get into early next week, again, as we get potentially another system to move through, helping to bring temperatures down here, although rainier, temperatures should begin to moderate here across the east. And especially models have been hinting at the southeast being closer to average and below average in terms of temperature as we go into the longer range. So this is going into next weekend here. Again, above average, but a lot closer to what you would expect this time of year here across the east as we get some of those storms to move through. Okay, so let's now look at potential even longer out than this next system that we're looking at, but we'll look at that system as well here. So let me explain the map first. What you see here is the chance of seeing an inch of snow within a 24-hour period, and these are the Euro ensembles we're going to be looking at. So this is currently the kind of, more relevant the color you see, the higher chance there is of seeing that inch of snow within a 24-hour period. So obviously right now we're dealing with that here across the Midwest where we have snow falling. But as we move this ahead in time, again, we kind of clear out a little bit here across the east, but the Euro ensembles hinting that, although the operational run didn't show it, potentially again seeing a swath of snow here from Illinois all the way through a place like Philadelphia going into early this weekend. So we'll watch out for that. Again, still some discrepancies, but we'll begin to iron those out. And the Euro even brings those chances kind of into New England by early next week, although not great. The chance is still there for this range. But what I want you to pay attention to here is as we go even further ahead into time, closer to the middle of January, we begin to see these chances of snow really begin to increase here across the eastern United States. So I think with such an active track that we're dealing with in terms of rainfall, it's not going to take much in terms of cold air. Even though we're kind of locked into this warmer pattern, if you just get one shot of cold air with such an active track, it'll be pretty easy to get some kind of snow here across the east to develop. So of course this is long range, but just want to show you that chance of snowier weather is increasing going into the middle of January across the eastern United States as we begin to kind of break down this pattern that we are currently in. All right, so let's take a look now at this general pattern that I'm looking at to change as we go into the middle of January. This is just a different way to show it. What this map is going to show you is the heights in the atmosphere. So blue generally means stormier weather. Red generally means clearer weather. So as we go ahead, this is going into this weekend. As you can tell, this is the storm that we're still dealing with here across the East Coast. So let me back up, actually, sorry. This is for this week. This is the current storm we're still dealing with here across the East. You'll see that will push out. And then as we get into this weekend now, sorry about the confusion, You see some dropping of heights here as we could be looking at a weaker system, again, moving through the eastern half of the country. But once we really get into the long-term pattern here and start going into next week, again, storm track here, potentially some storms moving more of a southerly track, which will help bring the chances of snow. And then going even longer range here, I mean, look at some of these tracks. This is really quite a good look to see snow here in the eastern United States. Again, this is close to 10 days out, but you have an active storm track here through the Gulf. And then this shows potentially the helping of funneling colder air down south. So we will watch out for that. These are the GFS ensembles, but nonetheless, you see going long term, we get a lot more of these blues here moving through areas of the east. So we'll watch out for that. I'll show you the European version of this map, and unfortunately, I don't have a way to zoom out, so I'm just going to show you on the United States scale. I'm going to skip ahead here, though, going into the long term again. This is, again, going into early next week, closer to the middle of January. We get a more active storm track here through the southern United States with potentially some cold air being funneled in. So again, with this kind of pattern, you've got to get more optimistic at least than what we've been dealing with. And the Euro, again, continues this, even another storm after that one, potentially trying to work its way through the east. So this is very encouraging compared to what we've been dealing with in terms of just this monster ridge in the east bringing way warmer than normal temperatures. So we're beginning to see the early signs that potentially we could be getting into a snowier pattern here across the east. And I'll keep you updated on that throughout the next couple of days and into the coming weeks. But that's really all I want to touch on for now. Of course, we're still trying to get through this current system moving through the country. So make sure you're staying safe tonight if you're in the southeast. And if you're up in the northern plains, hopefully you are enjoying some of that snow. But again, I hope everyone has a safe rest of their night, and I will see you all tomorrow.